of their lives.
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel. Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Got a cracking lineup tonight. Got Bill Etheridge, former UKIP MEP. Matthew Stadlen, political commentator. He's our left in the corner. He's going to be going head-to-head with Benedict Spence. We're going to go back in the day with former Wilfred Jones. We've also got glamour model Danielle Mason. But first, let's go to the news.
Good evening. The top stories this hour. Angela Rayner says she'll step down if it's determined that she committed a criminal offence over her tax affairs. It's over the sale of her council house in Stockport a decade ago. Questions have been asked about whether she paid the right amount of tax and if it was her main home. In a statement, Angela Rayner said the questions raised relate to a time before she was an MP and that she's taken expert tax and legal advice. Sir Keir Starmer says Labour welcomes the investigation.
We welcome this investigation because it will allow a line to be drawn in relation to this matter. I am fully confident that Angela Rayner has not broken the rules. She will cooperate with the investigation as you would expect, and it's really a matter for the police.
The former chief executive of Royal Mail says he doesn't know if money paid by sub-postmasters who were wrongly accused of stealing was recorded as profit. Adam Crozier told the Horizon Inquiry this afternoon that he assumed the money was accounted for by the company's financial team, but admitted that he couldn't be sure. He also said he was not aware that lawyers within the Royal Mail group conducted prosecutions and conceded that sub-postmasters should not have been treated as thieves. Energy Minister Graham Stewart has announced he's standing down from his cabinet role to focus on local issues. The Beverley and Holderness MP said he plans to focus on issues such as making roads safer, broadband delivery and increasing the number of defibrillators in his constituency. Justin Tomlinson now takes on the role of Minister for Energy Security and Net Zero. A man who attacked and killed another man with a serrated hunting knife in a Cornwall nightclub has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 23 years. Jake Hill also injured 4 others in just 20 seconds outside the Eclipse nightclub, causing fatal wounds to 32-year-old Michael Ridio-Allen, who intervened to protect others. The judge praised the victim's bravery, calling him a man of exceptional qualities. 22-year-old Tia Taylor also received a 3-year sentence for manslaughter, and 23-year-old Chelsea Powell was jailed for 15 months for perverting the course of justice. A passenger on a tram who was involved in a struggle with a knife-wielding attacker has been found not guilty of criminal charges. Police say Kyle Knowles, who was 32, was armed with a knife when he boarded a tram in Nottingham in June last year. He then launched an unprovoked attack on a passenger, causing serious knife wounds. However, the alleged attacker was himself fatally stabbed during the struggle. Nottinghamshire police arrested the passenger on suspicion of murder shortly after the tram came to a stop. They have now concluded that he acted in self-defence. A 23-year-old man has denied murdering a Good Samaritan who died as she tried to help a stranger. 46-year-old Chris Marriott, who was on a post-Christmas walk with his wife and 2 young children, when he stopped to help a woman who was unconscious in the street. He was killed when a car ploughed into a small crowd following a disturbance in the Burngreave area of Sheffield. Hassan Jangur denied the murder and manslaughter of Mr Marriott, but pleaded guilty to causing his death by dangerous driving. There are serious shortcomings in the Bank of England's economic forecasting methods, according to a report by former chair of the US Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke. It found staff were using out-of-date software with functions that could be automated, often performed manually. It comes after several of the bank's forecasts were repeatedly inaccurate during a period of economic turbulence. The price of a cup of coffee is on the rise. Arabica beans hit an 18-month peak. Both Vietnam, which is the world's largest supplier of Robusta beans, and Brazil, the top producer of Arabica coffee, have been hit by poor weather, stoking fears of a supply shortage, with both varieties rising sharply since the start of the year. Coffee roasters in Europe also say that supply chain issues are having an impact, complicated by Houthi attacks on commercial shipping. It comes after poor weather helped push up the price of cocoa shortly before the Easter holiday. And researchers have discovered the cause of the brightest burst of light ever recorded. The luminous burst of light, which occurred more than 2 billion light years from Earth and lasted just seconds, was so bright it was said to have blinded space instruments. The findings published in the journal Nature Astrology suggest Boat's likely origin is an explosion or supernova that came after the collapse of a massive star. For the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and joining me tonight for a lively debate is Bill Etheridge, former UKIP MEP, and back has left in the corner for about the 10th time. We've got Matthew Stadlen, thanks. He's a bit of a secret Tory, but he's not let onto that yet. Listen, ECHR guys this week poking their long noses into our business once again. They are demanding that we do more on climate change and saying it's a breach of our human rights, complaining. I think a bunch of old ladies went over from Switzerland complaining about heat waves. Looking at the weather out there, I think we could do a bit of a heat wave at the moment. We'll give our tourist industry a boost, especially in places like Skegness, where I go for my holidays. But Bill, is this a step too far? Should they butt out and should we leave the ECHR?
We should have left the ECHR years ago. The whole concept is about keeping a shared space of European laws and values. We voted for Brexit. Now, if you say to the people in the street, we voted for Brexit, but we're going to maintain a shared space of European laws and values, they say, what are you talking about? What's the whole point of it? And when you get judges in place who are appointed by the elites, and you put them into a lovely sounding thing, European Court of Human Rights. It sounds fluffy, but actually it's polishing a turd. The reality is they are there to suppress the wishes and the views of democratically elected governments and people. We should have nothing to do with it, and any human rights we need in this country, we can do our own Bill of Rights.
There we go, Matthew. Own Bill of Rights, which covers pretty much everything that's in the ECHR. Why can't we do that?
Well, your former boss, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, he's been describing the ECHR as a foreign court. It's not, it's an international court, and I'm actually proud, as a proud Brit myself.
Well, it is a foreign court.
No, it's an international court.
In Strasbourg, that's a foreign country.
It's an international court. We subscribe to it. We help one of our greatest Britons of all time.
Well, Winston Churchill.
It's true, isn't it? It might be painful.
This is like 80 years ago, Matthew.
It might be painful for you to recognise, but actually Winston Churchill was instrumental in the setting up of this court. Now, why should we stay a part of this convention? I think we should stay a part of it because it helps to protect us against the excesses of our own government. It protects the rights to liberty, to freedom of thought, to freedom of speech,
Have you been
the
to
freedom
Scotland
of life. It's there to protect fair and free elections. What is not to like about that?
Listen, I'm sorry, Matthew, but it's a lot of nonsense. Freedom of thought. Have you been to Scotland in this past week when it had about 5,000?
Well, you could take the Scottish government to court then, couldn't you? You could go to the ECHR and defend your own rights, Lee. That's the point.
I wonder whose side they'd be on.
Well, we'll have to wait.
Come on, Bill, you've got to come back on that.
I do need to. Yeah, Churchill was involved in it, but it was 80 years ago. I think he would be spinning like a top and taking off from his grave if he knew what it was about now. And you say protecting us from the excesses of our own government. We can vote for our own government. Now, yeah, we do. Our government plays a part in putting these people in place as judges. Yeah. But this is the elite and establishment putting people in place to protect their values. If we want to vote for something, why can't we vote for something?
Bill, you say these judges, are these qualified judges?
Well, they're qualified to be politically correct and they've got the right views and they pass the criteria of...
Come on, guys, come on. This is a bit like a pub conversation. I know we're in a pub. Let's be serious. Let's be serious for a minute. I don't know what either of you two guys, so I imagine you see yourselves as patriotic. I'm certainly patriotic. I don't know what it is that you guys like about Belarus or Putin in Russia.
Here we go.
Do we, well, everything I come up with, you say, oh, here we go. Australia isn't in Europe, Lee.
Exactly.
The point about Putin and the point about Belarus is they are in Europe. And they are the countries that are not signed up to the ECHR. We don't want to become a state like those guys. We don't want to side with them.
Are you genuinely saying, Matthew, that we could not have our own Bill of Rights and reform the Human Rights Act so it is much better and stronger and goes further than the ECHR?
This is about...
Are we not capable of doing that in that place over there?
I'm sure we are capable. This is to protect us against our own government if it infringes on our rights. You could have a democratically elected government that
That's
does
the key word,
terrible...
Matthew,
Let me
democratically elected.
Of course, and I'm a Democrat, and I could understand, by the way, although I voted...
But you're not a Democrat.
Well, hang on. Although I voted to remain, I understood the point about the remoteness of European democracy. I understood that was a reasonable argument, in my view, for leaving the EU. But the point is, you can have a democracy that actually then goes after minorities and in an illegal way. And this ECHR business is what helps to protect us in those circumstances. It's actually really important.
So this cause is to protect us from our own mistakes of voting for our choice of government.
Let's imagine our government.
Us from our own view.
But let's take this seriously. It's a serious point. I'm half Jewish, right? Let's say that we had a democratically elected government that went after Jews. In those circumstances, the ECHR would help to protect me as a Jewish person. Let's say they went after people from Nottingham. Yeah. You could say, well, it's democratically elected, so it should. The ECHR is an important international checks and balance system on that.
In that fluffy world that you live in, Matthew, that might be all well and good, but the ECHR are not doing much to protect the Jewish people that are feeling threatened and intimidated on Parliament Square when we have these vile, nasty, these pro-Palestinian marches. What are the ECHR doing then?
The police are there to protect these people. Well, of course they are. They're there to protect and I would be the first to say, if the police or individual police officers get it wrongly, then I would condemn them. But I don't think it's for the ECHR to come and tell our police exactly how to do that.
It's for the ECHR to tell us and Switzerland, for example, that we're not pursuing climate change agendas rapidly enough because they think we're victimising our own people. Have they taken into account that this climate change agenda, this net zero madness, will actually plunge hundreds of thousands of people into poverty? How about the human rights of those people?
I could understand
they are
the
sticking to the agenda of the elite.
I could understand the frustrations of the feeling of overreach on the part of the ECHR. And no institution is perfect. You say this climate change nonsense. The overwhelming majority of international scientific opinion is that climate change is real. Why are you guys groaning? Let's be adult about this.
When you say follow, we've heard this, follow the science. We heard this for the last few years. Follow who funds the science is far more important. A scientist, much like anyone else, will come up with a conclusion based around who funds them.
So you think international science is corrupt, do you?
I think anything that has large amounts of money going
Where's your
might be
evidence?
swayed.
What report are you showing me that international science is corrupt and that they are leading us into some sort of net zero conspiracy which is designed to make poorer people poorer? Come on, guys.
It's designed to make rich people richer.
Well, let me chip in here. I feel a little bit isolated here, Bill. If we're going to talk about net zero, Matthew, let's talk about some facts. And I've said it before on this show. If this country of ours sunk into the sea tonight, and everything went out, the lights went out, everything closed down, it would not make a blind bit of difference to this planet in carbon emissions.
None
Less than
whatsoever.
1%. It wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. So we've got these unelected officials, and they are unelected, dictating to us in this country. And can you understand, Matthew, why, after we've left the European Union, when we get unelected officials telling us what to do, why people in places like Ashfield, where I represent, are absolutely furious?
Let me explain to you. So you've got a drug dealer down the corner of the road, and I've got no time for drug dealers. And the drug dealer says, well, I might as well carry on selling my drugs, because if I don't sell the drugs, someone else is going to sell the drugs. The point is, how can we possibly, and we should be leaders in the world, because we are a great country, we've got a great history, we've got the 6th biggest economy or whatever it is in the world. We actually still do have something of an international reputation. How can we possibly go and lobby China and India and elsewhere and say you've got to be doing more on climate change if we throw our own climate change goals out the window? We've got to stand up and be grown up.
Do you think they take any notice when we lobby them, when we tell them, by the way, we had our own fantastic industrial era that got us great standards of living. By the way, you emerging nations, your economy,
we could put our heads in the sand.
That's very naughty.
Look, we can put our heads in the sand and pretend climate change isn't real, that it's all a hoax and we can't make any impact. We can do that, and the people who will suffer are our children, our grandchildren and so forth.
But no one says climate change isn't real.
It is
it's the
real.
amount of man-made climate.
Well, of course it is, because we put cows in the fields that give off this methane when they fart. We have carbon emissions that are through the roof around the world. We know that this is, science tells us this is having an impact on the climate. Lee, you started off with a joke, and this isn't a laughing matter, actually. You said, oh, well, we could do with a bit of climate change because it's not very hot outside the window. Come on, you know that is not about climate change. You might have an individual period of cooler weather or whatever it is. That doesn't mean the facts aren't staring us in the face. The world is getting warmer and we are contributing.
So it's raining outside, Bill. That's the cows' fault.
Absolutely.
So let's blame all the moo cows up and down the country.
Better stop eating beef, haven't we?
Yeah, stop eating beef. Shall we do that as well, Matthew?
Well, I think it would be a good idea if we ate a lot less beef. Do I still eat beef? Yes. Should I eat less beef? Yes.
Bill, Matthew, thanks for a lively debate. But coming up next, we're going back in the day with farmer Wilfred Emmanuel Jones. That's a corker.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere, largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Good evening. Well, I thought it was an absolutely knockout front page of a Sun that went online last night and was on display all over the country today. Union joke, and there is. Well, you can just about make out that it's the Union flag, better known perhaps as the Union Jack, but they've decided to add pink and all sorts of colours to it, and that is on sale for fans going to the Olympics in France this year to buy and to wear, which led to a great big panic what on earth would be on the shirts, shorts and kit of the athletes? Well, a statement did come out mid-morning from the British Olympic Association which said all Team GB athletes will wear the Union Jack as normal in Paris. However, Team GB kit itself is expected to include different shades of blue or red as in previous years. Well, I'm sorry, I don't really buy that. Now, we sent Adam Cherry out to Wembley today to ask some members of the public how they felt about this.
This episode of Companies Fixing Things That Weren't Broken. We're going to be asking the people of London what they think of the changing colours of the Team GB Olympic logo. Take a look at this.
The blue, the red and the white, it's perfect. I feel like, you know, it shouldn't be that controversial, but, you know, it's iconic. I feel like the colours are iconic. Everyone's known London for being, you know, red, white and blue.
I feel like it doesn't really represent England like that. The colours of the colours are kind of random.
I think it's very colourful. It's very pinkish and quite unicornish kind of thing, yeah.
A bit too unicornish for Team GB.
A little bit.
Disgusting. Well, we're British. Their colours are not pink and purple and...
like, you know, some patterns on there, it's all going crazy.
That's not our flag. That don't represent me.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World, and we're going back in the day now with Wilfred Emmanuel Jones. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's nice to be here. It's nice to meet the real man in real life, so thank you for inviting.
Now then, you've had a checkered life. You were born in Jamaica in 1957, a little bit older than me, Wilfred, and you moved to the UK in 1961. I think you came after your parents. What was it like for you as a young man coming to this great country of ours?
Well, you could imagine as a 4-year-old coming to this country. I could actually remember when I came here, it was in the winter, so it was the first time that I'd ever seen snow.
Yeah.
And it was a big culture shock because it would have been the first time that I'd seen my parents in 3 or 4 years. But that's the thing that happened in those days, is that actually people like my parents decided to leave their country of birth to come to this country in order to further their lives and the lives of their children. And one of the things I like to remind people of is this. It takes a real entrepreneurial-minded person to do that, because for everyone who came, there's a lot of people who didn't because they didn't want to change their lives. So I'm really grateful that my parents had the courage to come here, because it gave me all the opportunities that I then actually had.
Which is courage, and it's a gamble as well.
It's really, I just think, you know, I like to remind people from black backgrounds, look, you know, you've got to go and really celebrate your parents, because it was a very courageous thing to do in order to give you an advantage, not for you to be a victim, is to give you an advantage. And so one of the things makes me very, very cross is that actually over time with some people have developed this sort of victim culture. We're not victims.
So I don't want to create stereotypes here, Wilfred, but every single person I speak to from Jamaica seem to have cooking in their blood. They've got a passion for cooking. Why is that?
Well, actually, you're right. So anybody from Jamaica would tell you about how fantastic they are with their foods. And if we had time, I could actually tell you about the origins of foods. And so jerk is what everybody would know about in the Jamaica. And the origins of jerk actually was from the slaves. So what would happen is that the slaves had a way of marinating the meats, so it actually could taste quite well, and they had to smoke it so the slave hunters couldn't see the smoke. So that's the origins of those sort of.
But then you went one further and actually got a career doing this in TV.
Well, actually, you know, my career has been in food. So I started off actually as a chef, and my claim to fame is that I gave people like Gordon Ramsay his first break, because I went from being a chef, I then went to work in television as a producer, director, making food programs, traveling the world making food shows. I then left the BBC and formed my own food and drink marketing agency. So I launched brands like Lloyd Gross & Sauces, Kettle Chips, Plymouth Gin, and then I created my own brand, The Black Farmer, when I bought my farm down in Devon.
Let's talk about your farm. Say it's called
it's my farm. I'm not going to give the address in case I get people coming down there, but it's on the Devon-Cornwall border. I've had this farm now. It's coming up to about 28 years. Wow! So you can imagine 28 years ago buying this farm. And I can remember when I wanted to buy this farm, people say to me, well, why are you wanting to buy a farm down in Devon? You know, all this sort of metropolitan types are saying, well, don't they lynch black people down there? And one of the things I find really, really frustrating is there's this prejudice about people from rural Britain. Even today, there's a massive prejudice, and it's based on people have absolutely.
And why is that, Wilfred?
Well, it's based on naivety and people not having any real knowledge of what
ignorance.
It's absolute ignorance. And I think the thing is that I feel safer being in rural Britain than I would be in urban Britain. You know, you could rely and depend on your neighbours. You need to rely and depend on each other to be able to sort of.
So you've gone from the kitchen to the farm. So you're going where it all starts, you know, where we grow our foods and rear our livestock, whatever. But there's not many black farmers in this country. Why is that?
The reality is this, is if you and I had to go out and buy land today, it's very, very expensive. Most people who own land, they haven't had to go and buy it. It's been passed down through the generations. That's why you don't see many black people in farming, because it's a pretty expensive business. So one of the things that I really like to try and champion is that we need to get fresh blood in the farming community. Definitely need to do that. And the way to do that is there is a lot of land that's owned by big institutions in this country, whether that's the Church of England, whether it's a National Trust. And what I would like them to do is to go out and search for people from non-traditional farming black backgrounds, and to give those people a helping hand to start into food and farming.
So, Wilfred, there will be some people out there, a certain section of society who spout this nonsense about the countryside is racist, maybe farming's racist because there's not many black farmers. How would you respond?
Well, it's one of the things that really annoy me, because in my experience, that isn't the case. And I think what happens is this. If you are a stranger, whether you're black, whether you're white, and you turn up into an area, people are going to look at you. It's like, well, what are you doing here? Because part of your security living in the rural Britain is knowing your people. I've had people come down my lane, white people down my lane, and it automatically puts you on alert to think, well, you know, what are you doing here? Maybe that they're lost. I mean, only about, you know, a year ago, some Poles and Russians came down, and you're looking at what's going on because you don't look as though you're familiar. So I'm not going to say that actually racism doesn't exist. People do experience it, but I do think that rural Britain really gets unfairly treated, and it tends to be metropolitans who have this perception, intellectuals have this perception,
the intellectual,
that actually that if you're black you're going to have a difficult time. You know, that isn't my experience. As I said, what you really rely on is people that you know.
The intellectuals, Wilfred. I mean, I call them the educated idiots. And I mean, you've got a shop in Brixton. How would you get young black kids out of a place like Brixton? It's got its problems, we know it has, and get them interested in farming and have a great career?
I always wanted to have a farm shop. And the decision that I made is that I wanted my first farm shop to be right in the heart of Brixton, because it sends a very clear message that you can be black and also be part of rural Britain, to be part of farming. So what you need, and this is what I say to a lot of black people, our parents were pioneers. They came to this country to give us a break. And what we need to do, the second and third generation, is to branch out and to be part of the rest of Britain, rather than feeling that there's only a certain part of Britain that we could live in, there's only certain jobs that we could do. In terms of our creativity, our ideas, that could work really well in rural Britain. So the only way you're going to stop doing that is to get rid of this idea that rural Britain is racist. Because if you keep actually saying that, black people are going to think that this is a foreign land, and the people who are accusing...
But Wilfred, it's not black people that are saying that the countryside is racist.
That's exactly my point, is that it's white liberals. I've always felt that actually the greatest curse for people of colour are white liberals, because white liberals are there to treat black people as victims. And they make a fortune out of this. You know, they're all saying, well, the problem is this, and our job is to hold their hands and help them through. And I really have an aversion to do that. And I like to remind people of colour, we are courageous people that came to this country, and therefore we don't need to feel that we're
pioneers.
Exactly. And so one of the reasons I called the brand The Black Farmer, because I wanted to put it out there, because it begs the question, well, why aren't there black farmers in this country? Because I'm from a farming background. Most of the people who came from the Caribbean came from farming backgrounds. And then they went and took jobs in the city. There's a lot of black people that I meet that would love to actually go into farming, but actually it's about how do they get the sort of opportunities, how do they get rid of the stereotype that actually rural Britain is not a place for them.
I think the best way we get rid of those stereotypes is to tell the white liberals in places like Islington to shut up and get out into the real world.
You know that those white liberals hate people like you, and they hate people like me, because actually I'm not behaving how a black person is meant to behave. Really nice to meet you.
Absolutely brilliant, my friend.
Very nice to meet you.
We will try and come to your shop.
You must do.
There's a brilliant discussion there with Wilfred. But coming up next, we've got Right versus Left with Matthew Stadlen and Benedict Spence. It's a corker this week.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere, largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat zone.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Right versus Left. Joining me today, I have Matthew Stadlen and Benedict Spence. Look, guys, let's get straight to it. Sir Keir Starmer wasn't ever meant to be a Labour Prime Minister. He was meant to be a stopgap, really, for West Streeton to take over in 5 years' time.
Who said that?
We know that. We know that's what.
I think it's fair to say he didn't anticipate, certainly this election, he was about to become Prime Minister. His job was to detoxify the Labour Party.
He's done such a good job.
Well,
he's done a good job.
I think he's not going to be elected because he did a good job. He did it partly, but also because Boris Johnson and successive Prime Ministers decided to set fire to their mandate.
He wouldn't have been elected if he hadn't done a good job.
He was there to stabilise the ship, get rid of some of the lefties, get a few more seats in Parliament.
Overperformed,
and then he would have stepped aside after.
Let's be honest. I don't think there is a massive.
Party is underperformed.
But this new poll comes out that says that a very, very large number of people compared to Sunak would like to chat to Keir Starmer in this sort of environment in a pub.
Because he can talk about football, can't he?
Well, he can, of course. 48% say, right, that they would prefer to chat or think it'd be a good chat in a pub. Something like, I think, 27% lead over Rishi Sunak. That's important because one of the appeals, I think, to some people of you, Lee, is they think, I could have a pint with him, or Nigel Farage, I could have a pint with him.
But if you said to the same set of people, don't compare him to Rishi or any other politician, would you like to go out with Sir Keir Starmer tonight for a pint? They would say no.
I bet you he's a bit. I think he's a bit more interesting.
You're making
a bit
a
more
comparison.
charismatic behind the scenes. But anyway, listen, the key thing about Keir Starmer is he's a sensible, grown-up politician.
From what I understand, the Labour Party is not quite as triumphal as a lot of people in the media are. And, to go back to the Rochdale by-election and to talk about people like George Galloway, and again, the suggestion that they might win a very large majority gives succour to some people to the idea that you don't necessarily have to vote Labour. You can perhaps do your protest vote, because it doesn't matter because they're going to get it.
They'll worry about that.
They do worry about that because they don't think that the support is quite as strong as, say, Boris Johnson's was, that it is largely... They don't dislike Sir Keir Starmer, but nobody is enthused.
I know the Rochdale by-election might suggest otherwise, but I think, this is what I'm led to believe, that Keir Starmer has a pretty iron grip on the candidates ahead of the next elections. I don't think you'll get many hard leftists MPs coming in as part of the new batch if Labour do win big. I suspect that Keir Starmer would far rather
When you say a hard grip, Matthew, do you think he's fixing things?
I wouldn't go as far as to say he's fixing things, but I think he certainly has influence over the sort of candidate that is going to be put forward. I suspect that quite a few Tories will stay away from the polls this time, like they did in '97 when Blair won that landslide. Some will go to Reform. Keir Starmer has done enough to reassure some Tory voters that they don't have to turn out this time. And that's almost as good as making a whole load of new people say, yeah, we're desperate to vote Labour.
Demoralising your enemy, being better than necessarily converting them. I suppose.
But Matthew says that Sir Keir's overperformed. I disagree. I don't think he's performed very well at all. He's had a poor opposition, well, a poor government to compete against.
You were the deputy chair of the party until a couple of months ago.
Well, I can sit here and say these things, Matthew.
Why did you accept the job then? If you
Deputy Chairman.
If you thought they were so
we weren't.
poor.
To be honest, when I accepted the job as Deputy Chairman, I think that was in February last year. We were in a much better place as a party at that stage, and you know, over the past year or so, I always say to my colleagues, I'm pretty sure there's somebody in number 10 lies awake at night thinking of ridiculous things to say the following day to cost us even more votes.
Some people might they say that of you, though, Lee.
Well, no, because my job was membership. My job was to go around and rally the troops, get people to sign up, to motivate the troops and to speak after dinner, which I did very successfully. I probably spoke at over 100 associations up and down the country, raised lots of money for the campaign, and I'm very proud of what I did, because there's still a lot of people, good people within the Conservative Party who are classed as my friends, but, you know, it's number 10.
But how can you say Starmer hasn't done a good job? Think of where the Labour Party was under Jeremy Corbyn. People like me, who'd voted Labour all my life, could not vote Labour when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. It was a disastrous result in 2019, and we're now talking about the possibility of a landslide.
Again, it's questionable how many people are going to sort of come out for Sir Keir Starmer, because what we're talking about is simply people not turning out for Rishi Sunak. And I mean, it's a very frustrating position, I think, for a lot of people on the right.
Look,
because
guys,
even though it's not likely that
let's nip this in the bud. Matthew's getting excited. Again, we're going to do the yes or no quiz. I've got 5 questions. You know the rules. We have got a character that comes in here called Stephen Pound. He's been on about 10 times and he's never won it yet. And
I've won it every time I've passed. I'm worried about this chap, though.
Benedict has done this before. So, first question, Benedict. Should we have a referendum on leaving the ECHR?
No.
No.
Matthew, should boats in the Channel be turned back the same day?
No.
Yes.
Benedict, will Donald Trump win the US election?
Yeah, he will.
Sorry, mate. It was a yes, he will. Can't give you that one.
Mark,
he's laughing his
Mark, I've missed an open goal. I can't believe
Number 4, I'm sorry, I wanted you to win this. But will Rishi last until the general election?
Yes.
No.
And final question is, will Labour have a landslide victory at the general election?
Yes.
Yes.
The left in the corners won. This is a disgrace, Benedict. You had 5...
On a technicality.
It's not
it is a technicality.
It's a yes.
That's the point of the game. That's the only way you can lose the game.
Yes. You've just got to put your fingers in your ears and go yes or no.
Unbelievable.
So, do you want to come back on one, Benedict?
On the subject of the referendum on the ECHR, I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of leaving the ECHR in principle. My issue is I don't think that you can I don't think the Conservatives can win a referendum. And even if they were, why on earth would you do that just as the Labour Party are about to come into government? Why on earth would you give your opponents an open goal as to what would replace it? I think it's something you could have done 5 years ago. It would be a really stupid idea to do.
Can you imagine the stress of going through another toxic, divisive referendum? It would be like Brexit all over again. And actually, I disagree with you on who might win. I suspect we might vote to leave the ECHR. I think that's a bad thing. You could say I'm being anti-democratic, therefore, in not calling for a referendum. I don't want to live in a society where every important issue is decided by a referendum. We have people like you, whether we agree with you or not, around the country. We have a localised system of democracy. We have people like you who are elected representative, and we have to trust you to get it right. That's why we vote for you, or don't.
So you like local representation?
I think it's important. I was
But you also like the ECHR as well?
Look, no, because I think there's a point...
Do you see where I'm going on this one?
I absolutely can, and it's on the face of it a clever point, but I think having international checks and balances, being part of an international legal system where we actually sign up to some important core principles, such as, like you'd agree with, freedom of expression, freedom of thought, liberty, life, all those sorts of things, and fair elections. Just a quick one.
It's always a quick one, isn't it? It's always a quick one. I've been on there for 10 minutes
Interviewed Theresa May, and I would be critical of her, of course, when she was Prime Minister. We were on stage together, and there's something that is very impressive about her, and that is that even when she was Prime Minister, she worked hard, it seems, for her constituents. She still went round knocking on doors. She understood that the only reason she was able to be in a position to be a number 10 was because her local constituents voted her in. I think that's precious.
Yes.
Don't you?
Not really. I think...
well, tell that to your constituency and they might beat you out.
Well, look, we'll see. Hopefully you'll come up and help me on the campaign trail.
Can you imagine?
In Ashfield. Benedict, I'd love to have you up there knocking a few doors. Look, that's been another lively discussion, but coming up next, we've got Last Orders with former glamour model Danielle Mason.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's a remarkable story, isn't it?
Amazing.
Extraordinary. And also, she was unflappable, apparently, the Princess Royal.
She's
just
brilliant.
refused to get out of the car and said, I'm not going anywhere. Extraordinary. Well, Jim Beaton was awarded the George Cross for protecting the princess and delighted to say joined us now, along with the former head of royalty protection, Di Davis. Jim, you won't remember, but I met you some time ago at the Imperial War Museum when Princess Anne was opening an exhibition to do with the George Cross, and you were there reunited with her. And you told me then what great admiration you had for the princess, cool under fire, but you didn't do so badly yourself.
It was probably my job. And also, I had a wee bit of police training, not very much, but a little bit, whereas Princess Anne had nothing. And yet, the way she displayed it, you would have thought she'd been highly trained to deal with any type of that situation.
Even though you'd had some training, you took 3 bullets for the princess. You effectively stood between her and a deranged gunman.
Well, I was supposed to be a protection officer, really, so I just tried to fuddle about. You must remember that back in 1974, there was no communication, and we were extremely lucky that Michael Hills, who was outside Clarence House and nearby, had got one of the fast police radios, or radios on his shoulder, so he was able to send a message out. Otherwise, we would have just been relying on the good old public to phone in and say there was something happening.
Yeah.
So times have changed drastically.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's time for Last Orders with Danielle Mason,
Hello.
TV presenter,
Yes.
former glamour model,
Yep.
done a little bit of reality TV. We won't talk about that.
Yeah. You can if you
You've done
want.
quite a bit of GB News this lately as well. I've seen
Yes.
with our
Nana.
good friend Nana Aquay. She's
Yeah.
a great lady.
Yeah.
But you've got a few passions in your life. You've got. Let's talk about this pink ribbon charity that you're involved in at the moment.
Yeah, so I was made ambassador to Pink Ribbon charity last year. So, you know, it's a great cause for breast cancer. There's people like Linda Noland, Christine McGuinness involved. So what we do, like, we just help the charity and promote it and get other brands involved to help that way, and it helps people that are with all aspects of breast cancer.
OK, so have you got a personal story as to why you got involved in this?
I know I've got a couple of friends that have had breast cancer.
Yeah.
I personally haven't, but I just made such a good connection with the charity. My good friend Lisa runs it, so I got involved that way, and we just all get on so well. So yeah, that's how I did that.
That's an amazing job you're doing.
Yeah.
So how did you go from being a sort of glamour model out there, you know, obviously your looks and everything about you, which is what people want to see, to be doing something completely different?
Well, when I started glamour modelling, I was actually quite young. I had some work. This sounds really bizarre. I had some work experience on EastEnders when I was 17, and then from there, I ended up meeting Katie Price's agent at the time, Dave Reed, who got me page 3 at The Sun. So I was doing that for a while and doing my travelling and things like that with it. And then from page 3, I went on to do some reality TV shows, like some quite big ones, and then from there on, I did a little bit of acting here and there, and then I trained to be a presenter. Excellent. And I went on, and now I do all sorts of things. I've just finished the Ideal Home show, which I had my own shows that I produced and did live to the audiences there. And then I've got all my charity work. Wow. Hopefully looking...
So it's a bit of a journey you've been on, and it's funny, isn't it, where people sometimes start the journey and where they end up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, 20 years ago when I started modelling, you learn a lot in those 20 years, and your tastes change with what intrigues you in life, and you learn a lot. Then you go and you have kids, and again you change as a person, and yeah, so I've just changed as a person.
So some young ladies out there, Danielle, may look at you and think she's glamorous, she's beautiful, I want to be like that, want to get into the glamour industry or the modelling industry. There's a lot of pressure now on social media for young girls to look a certain way. What sort of advice would you give to these young ladies?
Just be yourself. There's so many girls that just want to literally be famous, people out there that want to be famous. But for me, if you've got a passion and you follow that passion, that drives you to be successful in something you love anyway. Yeah. So, you know, the thing is with social, it can be quite fake.
Yeah.
And yeah, although I'm on social media, I don't always go by what I see on social media.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the modelling industry's completely changed. Like, when I was modelling, you would be paid to be a model. Now, I hear, which literally dumbstrucks me, girls paying to be a model.
Really?
Yeah, like girls paying to be on the front cover of FHM. Well, back in my day, it was like 100 grand to be on the front of a magazine like that, or... but now you find that it's the other way around. The girls are paying, so it's just... These people are just taking advantage, I think, of young girls.
Yeah. So social media can be a bit of a gutter, a bit of a sewer sometimes. There's lots of bullying, lots of horrible stuff going off there.
Yeah.
But let's go into the real world.
Yeah.
Let's come off of social media, out there on the streets of London, lots of nasty stuff. You know, with knife crime is rife in London at the moment. And I understand that you're involved with another charity which is trying to tackle knife crime.
Yeah, so I'm involved with a charity called Project Youth. And what they do is they set up bleed control cabinets across the UK. So they've started in Sussex. They're trying to get them in London at the moment. Wow. So it's a lot to do with stabbing. And they promote a lot of put the knife down, like that sort of thing, no knives. They look after children that are going the wrong way. So they... take them in and, you know, talk to them and give them, like, therapy, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's dealing with young children that are going off the rails or haven't necessarily got family, that are going down that bad route. But, yeah, no, they're mainly...
So these cabinets, you know, isn't this a sign of the times that we've actually failed on knife crime?
Yeah, well, I mean... I don't know if it's just media, but knife crime is getting really bad now. Like, people think it's cool to have a knife. And they think it's cool, kids think it's cool to stab people, and it's just got out of control, and I think so much more needs to be done. I know crime's gone up all over London in the last year. Is it like 50%? Like, just everything's going up for some reason. Well, we know why it could be, but just everything seems to be getting out of control, and youngsters seem to be turning to knives, and it's
a sad state of affairs when a young man, and it's normally men in London, have to go out with knives to feel safe to protect themselves. And we've seen the consequences, they're horrific. You know, there's young men dying every month in London now of their stabbing victims. But look, Danielle, that's a fascinating conversation. I could have spoke to you for a lot longer, maybe next time.
That's all right.
But give Nana my regards when you see her next time. And thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Danielle Mason. Thanks for watching Lee Anderson's Real World, and a massive thanks to all my brilliant guests tonight. But coming up next, we've got the brilliant Mark Dolan on Friday Night Live.
Thank you, Lee. Well, the weekend starts here. In my Friday feeling monologue, I'll be explaining why Labour are wrong about literally everything. Wrong on trans madness, wrong on Brexit, wrong on Corbyn, wrong on lockdowns, you name it. I will be dealing with Sir Fail Starmer in no uncertain terms. Plus, as the woke Navy employ sailors who can't swim, will diversity bring down the West as we know it? You won't believe this story. The Royal Navy are now hiring sailors who can't swim, so if the boat goes under, we're all doomed. Welcome to hell. Also, Liz Truss releases an autobiography with some shocking revelations, including some serious gossip about one Boris Johnson. Also, is it time to bring back the British Empire? Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. Bring your own drinks. The admission is free.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere, largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for 2 worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel treats chance. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday